Hi, my guest today is Amantha King, Workplace Menopause Consultant. He also has something called Empower You, which is a growth and development program. And she's an NLP coach and she's a menopause speaker. So many things that I'm going to let her continue telling us what she is. After I just say that we're going to be talking about, to me, it's the first stage of menopause, which is mood swings. And I think that mood swings is like you're not quite sure if you're in menopause or not, and then all of a sudden you start realizing you have these mood swings. So Amantha, welcome. Thanks for being my
Thank
guest.
you.
I'm so excited to have you. And if you could introduce yourself a little bit more than I did.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel it's a real privilege and an honor, and I love knowing you. We haven't known each other that long, but I love knowing you, and I equally love your energy. So, yes, my name's Amantha King. I'm a workplace menopause consultant and coach. I arrived in this role by chance, not by choice, and I think that's probably the first thing to say. I've used my experience to create something that I believe is in service of all women, whatever your faith, whatever your culture, whatever your ethnicity. I arrived at this stage in life through an early menopause, and that is categorized as anyone under 40. I had my first and only child at 34. At 36, I started to get lots of symptoms. Now, if I sort of predate that, I actually worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So I had a very, very abundant background knowledge in all things HRT, hormone replacement therapy. So I knew the therapeutic area really, really well. But it took me more than a decade to connect my own dots. And what I mean by that, statistically, on average, women will walk around with as many as 8 symptoms for 14 months before they present themselves at a doctor. And it can take another up to 2 years before you get a diagnosis. Now, if you asked anyone to endure anything for that length of time, just one thing, I think that would be very damaging to their mood, to their relationships. And yet that is what we're experiencing. So to cut a very long story short, after sort of self-diagnosing, which is dangerous, but I had that academic background that I could do that, I realized I was in perimenopause. I nearly put myself into financial crisis, paying for private medical care, again not getting answers, which is very frustrating. The NHS was largely useless to me. In fact, they gaslighted me and made me feel like I was an anxious first-time mother. So all of these things are not helpful. So I have turned that into a career, actually, which I love. I go into corporate businesses, global businesses all around the world, and we ensure they understand how important it is to keep women in work and to support partners whose partners are going through menopause, because it does affect partners, men too, families, communities. It really affects everybody. So 51% of the population deserve to get better care and treatment. So I do that, but I also combine it with my executive performance coaching hat on, which I'm an NLP coach, which stands for neuro-linguistic programming. And it's all to do with this, which is the brain. And it's all to do with how you can move beyond your barriers. And even like you said, doing this amazing podcast, sometimes we talk ourselves out of things. And I think that becomes much more apparent during this midlife stage. So I've created a program, as you said, called Empower You, which is all about empowerment. And empowerment is about stepping into your power, not stepping out of it. So I hope that gives you a little flavor of what I'm about.
Yeah, and I think it's like just a little, let's just say that it's a little flavor because you're much more than that. But what I find, I don't know if you found it, but when you went into the stage of menopause and you went to your doctor, I think that's a really important part, because when we say that, we went to the doctor and they negated or they gaslighted you, I think it's important to understand what happened. A woman is made up of so many different parts, and we go to a doctor, sometimes we're depressed, or sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on in our lives. And I think right away the doctor looks at us with that hat on. Oh, she's a woman, da 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 da. And I think that's where they start this, gaslighting or making us feel like we're stupid. And I think this is the most important part, to start and explain to the doctor, actually, I know myself and I know that this isn't right. And I think that could make the depression and everything, if we start talking about it and explaining, no, I'm not happy with what you're saying, that I think is really important for us. So Mantha, let's talk about how the mood swings, and how do they come about? Where did they, I know you have that brain, which I love looking at that brain, because it must be something. Could you imagine your brain like that? But I think it's really important. Like, let's explain to people exactly, why you feel that way. Where's it coming from? What is it? What's going on there?
Okay, so a universal experience for all of us is puberty.
Yeah.
And so, really, perimenopause, which is the first stage of the menopause transition, is like puberty in reverse. If we think about puberty, puberty is the hormones rushing in sporadically, without a structure, without a process to follow. There's peaks and troughs. And we see that, don't we, in our teenagers, if we have children, and maybe we can even remember ourselves, what a roller coaster ride it is. If you pan forward into midlife, it's the opposite. It's your hormones rushing out erratically. So very, very basically, we have three hormones, okay? And they are all dictated largely by our ovaries and by various parts of our brain. They talk to each other. Now, what happens is that when you're born, you have a certain number of eggs in your ovaries, okay? And every month that an egg pops out, what's left is a shell, and we call that the corpus luteum. Now, that is very, very important, because the eggshell that's left stimulates a signal to the brain, which makes us make something called progesterone. And progesterone does exactly what it says. If we break up that word, progesterone, it stands for progestation, and gestation is the medical term for carrying a child. So what we know is that corpus luteum is very, very important, because what it does is it maintains the lining of the womb, but what it also does, it has other secondary properties, and those secondary properties are it's an anti-anxiety hormone, it's a promoter of sleep, and it protects your nerves. So I only need to say those three things to you for us to understand that in midlife, then, as we're running out of eggs, we have less progesterone available to us. We might actually not get an egg releasing 1 month. So if we don't get an egg releasing, there's no eggshell. Therefore, we have lower levels of progesterone. Now, what I always say to people is there's a bit of a lag phase on terms of reaction. If you put your hand on a hot surface, you're going to get an immediate bit of feedback. With our hormones, there's a bit of a 2 to 3 week lag on our hormones, which is what happens today probably won't show up till 3 weeks later. So this whole declining of progesterone is the thing that impacts our mood first and foremost. The media are obsessed by talking about estrogen, which annoys me intensely, because actually that is not the first hormone to become erratic. It is progesterone. So I hope, does that make sense?
Yes, and I'll tell you what, I've had a bunch of different speakers, and it keeps on coming up about this progesterone being more the problem than even the estrogen, which is also a problem. But yeah, but they don't really give anything for this progesterone. She was saying, they were saying that it's harder to get your doctors to give you something for that.
Yeah, so if we sort of see how that translates, what that translates to is, so for example, if we don't have that eggshell available to us, it means we're not going to be having regular menstrual cycles. What we're going to be having instead is carrying a lot more menstrual blood. That can make you feel more bloated. Bloatedness makes you feel irritable because there's an imbalance between the salt and water ratio in our body. So we feel heavier. We're probably snacking and craving certain foods. We're not moving around as much. We're probably not sleeping as well. We might be leaning into things that are largely unhelpful. And then what starts to happen is with progesterone, starts to influence, as estrogen does, it influences our insulin. And our insulin is responsible for that nice, steady flow of glucose into the cells. So on a bad day, let's imagine your progesterone level has dropped. You're not sleeping as well. You're leaning into caffeine. That's making you a bit wired and tired. So you start getting the munchies every 2 hours. Your sugar's all over the place. You're getting highs and lows. You're raging at people. Everything annoys you. And that's very, very, it's like you are being hijacked. And what I often say to people, it's like menopause happens to you. You're not choosing it.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
have this comment levied to me all the time, which is, yeah, but I see people, keeping their act together at work. People aren't keeping their act together, there is a payout. There is always a payout. They might be keeping that suppressed, but when they get home, there has to be a discharge of this energy.
And
And so
that's when you
we,
have the screaming and the shouting, and yeah,
yes.
I
I mean,
had
what do you notice in your community? Do people talk about how their mood
okay, so
is
this is I
affected?
really had a really interesting one this a few weeks ago actually. My father's a rabbi and he
Yeah,
has this community. Anyway, someone came up and he was saying, "Oh, my wife, I don't know what to do with her. She's totally lost it. She's screaming all day. I just don't know what's wrong with her. I don't." And because I'm working so much in this field now, my father right away said, "Hey, how old, how old is she or whatever." They figured it. I mean, she's in menopause. She's in early stages of premenopausal at the moment. And
yeah,
obviously it's affecting her nerves. She might have had nerve problems before and it kicked in big time now.
yeah,
And he just doesn't know where to start, the husband. But once you could say to him, "Hey, did you think of this? Let me explain to you what it's all about. Let's give you some knowledge." Hopefully, I mean, hopefully she'll be able to go to the doctor. She'll be able to know what to ask for. So yeah, we do see this a lot and we see people not knowing about it. So they don't know what to do when they start losing it so
yeah.
completely.
And can I sort of make one other thing? Because I want to be really clear. I am very sure that menopause just accentuates things.
Yeah,
I think we talked about this before. It puts a spotlight on things. And one of the things why I always use the brain, and this is why I developed my program, is because this little black dot here is your amygdala. It's your fight, flight, freeze, and fawning reflex. Now, people often don't know about the fawning bit, which is feeling to feel safe. You overcompensate and behave in ways to try and get people to like you. I'm pretty sure that estrogen, our joy hormone, and testosterone, which is all about that resilience and that capability, as those also start to decline, I think it just makes this more trigger happy. And what I mean by that, I think we go through our lives really distracted, raising families, we're building careers, we're doing all of these things, and then the hormone rug gets pulled out from under us, and all the things that maybe have niggled us or we
that's
feel are important to us, they're not appreciated or respected, suddenly they become very powerful in our lives. And our tolerance, our what I call our window of tolerance, diminishes almost to the size of a letterbox. And so I think what also happens around this midlife stage, honestly, I think the menopause makes us more aware about, do you know what? I'm not tolerating
that.
certain things anymore in my life. And then, of course, we don't have that tolerance, we just sort of vent.
And so that's where I was trying to say in the beginning that it's a dirty word in the respect that, oh, everything is negative. But if you know in yourself that these things are coming up from a place of, I don't want to accept it, well, then it's not so negative anymore. You just have to learn how to use it in a more positive way, which I mean, most women who go through the menopause will pivot into new areas of their lives at the end of it, which
Yeah,
shows you that they
100%.
can't be bothered being the doormat from years ago. Now I want
Yeah.
different things.
And
Yeah,
you know, the most bought item is a horse, actually.
really.
Yeah, because what tends to happen psychologically, if you think about yourself, in your 20s and 30s, what were you focused on? You're probably focused on having fun, making your way in the world, doing what you wanted to do, not a care in the world type thing. But very quickly for women, we get into either a family environment, a relationship environment, our priorities are changing, but our priorities are changing in respect mostly of other people.
Yeah,
We're not thinking about ourselves so much. And I do think this, whatever your culture, whatever your faith, I think this is a universal thing for women, that actually we put ourselves last on that list. And then the menopause comes when maybe it's much harder to keep everything going. I call it the spinning plates.
yeah.
I
That,
often was
that's
hearing
so
crashing
much.
plates around, crashing plates. So I think women get, this is a great opportunity, and I really want to advocate this. I'm 52 now. I'm a postmenopausal woman. I have two businesses. I'm living my best life. With the right support, I'm here to say to people, menopause is the best thing that's going to happen to you. Because do you know what? You let go of the baggage and you go, right, because you're going to spend up to 38 years as a postmenopausal woman.
Yeah, that actually shocked me. how long you are in that stage of. I thought, okay, you get it for a few years and it's next. I'm actually 58 and I'm still deep within my menopause, which I thought, oh, I'm finished with this. And I was quite shocked that it could go on that way. And yes, you do change. I definitely have changed myself completely. I mean, when I was young, I was a hairdresser, I was a florist, I've done a lot of things. But from then till now, I'm a totally different person. And I'm proud that the menopause has made me this way. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I had really hard times. I mean, I had a hysterectomy, and as soon as I had it, they let me out of the hospital, telling me, "Oh, you're going to have hot flushes." Great, I'm going to have hot flushes. That sounds interesting. I'll be a bit warm, not realizing the rage of hot flushes, the rage of your nerves, the rage of everything going haywire. So yes, it was a hard situation, and I did get, sometimes more depressed than others. But it was a positive stage in my life. At the end of it, at the end, coming towards the end of it, hopefully, it has been a positive place for me. So let's go back to a woman comes and she starts feeling these, hormonal changes. She's feeling really down. Where would you say, how would you say she could, handle it? What could she do?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So let's cover that in two ways. Okay, so first of all, it's very important to keep a check of your symptoms. And I call it connecting your dots. There are more than 50 symptoms associated with perimenopause. And what we must absolutely do is check that it's not anything else.
Yeah.
We mustn't
That's such an
assume.
important part. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, what I would do anyway is just keep a check, because if you go to your doctor, they'll ask you to just monitor it anyway. So
Yeah.
why not get ahead of the curve? There's so
I'm,
many
I'm
apps
just
that you
looking
can.
for that book that gives
Yeah, the
like
Make Menopause Matter. There's a symptom checker,
I'll put
and
it
I did have
underneath
a copy to hand.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, so the Make Menopause Matter campaign and charity, they have got an amazing booklet, and within it is a symptom tracker, but there are apps as well that you can use. There's the Adora Health app, that's a really good app as well. You can take a look at that. There's the Balance app. These all have trackers freely available within them, and you can start to see patterns, because actually we don't want to give ourselves something else to do. You don't want to walk around trying to remember that stuff.
Yeah.
You then take that, you can start to see some of the physical symptoms, some of the psychological symptoms, because most of the symptoms are psychological, so we can't see them. And, let's remember, most GPs up until last year may have had possibly 2 hours of training around menopause. It was not mandatory.
In 5
Um,
years. In five
yes,
years, 2 hours. We have to really put our heads to that one. That's
for something that's going to affect 51% of the population, it's disgraceful.
yeah, terrible. But they
So
put a bit of a change to that now. So hopefully
absolutely. So all medical students will now, it is a compulsory element. However, so you're going to make it easier for the doctor by going, here's a list of symptoms. The booklet also says it could be perimenopause. The next question I'd be saying is, why can't, if they say, well, I don't think you're perimenopausal because you're still having your periods, that is absolutely not correct.
yeah.
So let's make sure that people understand you can be perimenopausal and menstruating. So this booklet is going to really empower you. I would then say things like, let's think about it logically. Sleep is so important. Our body and our hormones are very, very closely linked. So some things I'd like people to consider. Number one, how can you reduce the stress in your life? Because what we know is if you're stressed, you don't make sex hormones. It's as simple as that. But because evolutionary, that makes sense. We were running away from dinosaurs millions of years ago, and that's why we have the stress response. It makes sense that you're not going to be feeling sexy and wanting to procreate if you're running for your life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why the body has this
That is,
mechanism. It's either stress or sex hormones. It's you got to make a choice.
yeah.
So what I would say is really be honest with yourself and look at what the stresses are in your life. Now, we are in 2024. There is a lot of world conflict. There is a lot of financial hardship. There is a lot of, indifference still to treating women and women's health conditions. We're trying to rise up the career ladder. We've got aging parents. We've still got children at home or children leaving. it's never been harder to be a woman in 2024 because we are expected to juggle it all. So it's really
I'll tell
important.
you, Amantha, if I could just stop you there for a second, because actually in our community, there's a little bit more going on, because you know how you
Okay.
said in your 20s you're writing, you're having a good time. Actually, by us in our 20s, we are already having children, because
There we
most
go
of us,
then.
yeah, most of us will get married just like 2021 and start right away having it. So there's a whole from 20 to 30 where we have been doing it still. So for us, you know,
Yes.
yeah. So really, there's a lot. So we're now not
There's
only
a lot to
we're
process.
married, we have children we're getting grandchildren by this age.
Yes. And so the thing is, if you are really honest with yourself, some people even don't even get to self-care. I used to be terrible. you know, I'm a self-proclaimed workaholic, you know, and I love my work, but actually you can love your work, but if you're not looking after yourself, you can't, you know, your health is your wealth. So things like putting time in, just have time for you, like without exception, no requesting or explaining to anybody. You need to look after yourself. You know, are you trying to do too much? How much sleep are you giving yourself? Because if you're getting less than 7.5 hours, that's going to be problematic for this body that is aging and metabolism is winding down. So also exercising. I hate exercise, I'll be honest with you, but I do it. And I do a particular type of exercise at this stage in my life because I can't get away with doing nothing. So I do lifting weights. Now, I was traveling all day yesterday. I was working in Wales. I came back, and do you know what? 20 minutes, stuck a YouTube video on, and I lifted my own body weight for 20 minutes. Do you know what? I slept better. I wasn't snacking in the night. And I got up and I feel refreshed this morning, and I've built some more muscle. So I think the thing I want more than anything, address your stress and address it through better sleep, what you're eating, and cut out some of those vices like alcohol and caffeine.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'll say more when you know when we say make sure that you have time for yourself, and people say, oh, self-care. It's become also another, you know, one of these words that people think, oh, I
Yeah.
have to have my facial and I have to have my out. It's not really that. It's like 5 minutes, every 5 minutes. If you've taken an hour, 5 minutes just to sit down and say, I'm just breathing for this 5 minutes. I think
Love
that's
that.
already your thing. You don't have to go all out. You don't have to make everything into this performance. It's not about that. It's about making sure to make changes in the lifestyle that you are living, that you know, you have to just make little changes. It doesn't have to be massive.
No. And so can I tell you, so I love that you've said that because you're so right. We often think it needs to involve money, materialism, things. It doesn't. I wake up in the morning. You know, how many of us wake up and the first thing that we do is go on our mobile phone? The first thing we should do is get outside and get some blue light, get some sunlight on the back of your eyelids. That what that does is it regulates your metabolism for the day. Also, at the end of the day, cut out the blue light. Go out in the afternoon, particularly now that we're getting more light. The red spectrum of the light after 12 o'clock stimulates the body to get ready for sleep. Do you know you've got billions of internal body clocks, not just one, but the master clock is regulated by how much natural light we get. I'm sat under a roof window, so I'm getting a lot of light every day. Do you know the amount of light you get every day regulates your sleep? So for me, my morning starts. I've got the Calm app on my phone. I've got some noise cancelling headphones. I literally lie in bed and I do some meditative breathing for the first 10 minutes of the day, and that's it. So you're so right, and it is very powerful. Less is more often, you know,
Yeah.
beginning, ending your day, and saying that you're worth it.
Interesting that you say about the light. I know that you've met. I mean, we both have in common, Dr. Zoe. I call my Dr. Zoe, right? Zoe Hotz.
Yeah, Dr. Zoe Hodson, she's
Yeah.
lovely.
Now she's a big like. I know. I went to her, you know, privately, and we had this discussion. And she was such a. The first thing she said to me is, "How much light are you getting?" You know, because I'm terrible at sleep. So how much light are you getting? She goes, the first thing I want you to do in the morning, she did, I mean, telling me not to go on my computer is like telling me, uh, uh, don't have, I don't know what, but it's pretty hard for me. So she said,
Yeah, of course.
just open the window shades and let the light in. And, just that little step
Yes.
was a game changer for me. It's amazing.
Yes. It is amazing. And I think be curious about your body. This is amazing. This is the house that we live in. So be curious about it and love it and look after it like you look after your external home, because it's the only one you've got, really. And so these little snippets are really, really helpful. And on my YouTube channel, I get lots of amazing people, sleep experts. So, the more we can bring this knowledge into one place, like you're doing on your YouTube channel, that's so powerful,
Yeah.
really and truly.
I'll tell you what, we're going to come to the end of this soon, but what I really want to, first of all, I forgot to mention that you had that podcast because you had me as a guest there. And I want you to just know that podcast, I've been listening to it. And some of your guests are so interesting. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I'm really,
Thank
I'm just remembering, I just wanted to make sure that I have the right exact name that it is because I know myself with names. I'll say it wrong, but it's called, Amantha, tell me what it was called. Why don't I wrote it down. Could you say it again, the name of it? Because
Well, my YouTube channel.
Oh, Menopause Conversations.
Menopause Conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's Amantha King Coaching at 1026 on
We're
YouTube.
going to put it all below, but I just wanted you, it's a fantastic, really fantastic podcast. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Before
that.
we come to the end, could we just give people something to go away with that is a concrete mood changer? So we said exercise, we said the sun, we said going for a walk. But is there something that you would like to say, first of all, about how, I mean, really, what would you like that, let's end it differently. What would you like to say to the guest at the end of, coming towards the end of this with mood swings?
I would say it is perfectly normal. So I want to normalize it. Okay. You are not broken. It is not because of something you are doing. This is happening to you. So I want you to cut yourself some slack. It's happening to everyone, whether they're talking about it or they're not talking about it. Some of us can be very private. Some of us are very public about it, but it is happening to everyone. And this is why in your workplace, it is now going to be a focal point. The government is saying that we need to support people so that people don't step away from work, because mood swings also includes anxiety. It's not just about rages. It's not just about being cross or angry and frustrated. It could be loss of confidence. These are all things that affect our mood. So what I would say is it's normal. Let's normalize it. Number two, there is power in conversation. So actually, between you, talk about how you're feeling. You will feel less alone. My Empower You program is really powerful because that actually helps people retune into their own confidence. And I would say celebrate this time in your life with small wins. Do a few of the things that scare you a little bit. Maybe do them with somebody else. Have a buddy is always a really powerful thing. Some supplements I think that can really, really help. It's really powerful to take things like magnesium 3 and 8. Magnesium 3 and 8 is really good to help you sleep. And remember, if we're sleeping better, our mood is better. I would also say things like ashwagandha. Now, there are no large-scale clinical trials on these, but ashwagandha is very, very much revered in Asian culture. It is known to calm the nervous system. So you can get a brand of ashwagandha. And again, taking it at night just brings the whole nervous system down. Because remember what we said, that progesterone is dropping, so our nerves are a little bit more jangly. So things like magnesium, ashwagandha. If you don't want to take a supplement, just get some bath salts. Like you can get these bath salts, which are loaded with magnesium. Yeah. So that's another way.
From Better, I think it's called Better You or something.
Better You.
Good spray for magnesium.
Absolutely. And it's so good. So I would say, and lean into things that can help you in your food. So magnesium rich foods, dark chocolate is great. The higher the cocoa solids in dark chocolate, really good for you. Lots of nuts and seeds and things like this. A book that I absolutely love, which is called The Natural Menopause Method by Karen Newby. That is a fantastic book for how you can eat your, so how you can eat your way to a more beneficial menopause. She's fantastic, and her retreats are amazing. She does 1-day retreats,
Oh, I know.
and you get to. I've been on one; they're absolutely fabulous. So there is so much that you can do, and I would say just keep talking to one another, because if you're all researching and doing stuff, and with your podcast, I think that's going to be a really great starting point for people.
Wow, thanks. I think that you gave us a lot of information in our short interview, and I'd love to have you back one day because I think that you have so much to give us. But it was really fabulous having you here, Amantha, and you are
Thank you
just
so much.
you're amazing. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, and I wish all your listeners well. And you know, there's power in togetherness. That's what I'd like to say.
100%. 100%. Okay, thank you very much for joining me, and
Thank you.
thank you all you who are listening. And I hope you'll come back to hear some more of the Uplifting Menopause Conversations.